What is up, beautiful people? We have a very, very special guest, as you can see on the right side over here. And I'm going to have Mr. Andrew introduce this incredible man himself.
Let's do it. Welcome to the Daily Live. So today, first off, we're in Louisville, Kentucky. And as I'm getting ready to introduce this very first ever guest for our Daily Live show, first off, why are we in Louisville, Kentucky, and where in the heck are we? Because we're not in the studio.
So we just finished our 3-day Truca Ari event. So you can see the team running around in the back. Andrew and I just shared the stage for about 8 hours a day for the past 2 days. And we did the live show in between. But we're just so excited to be here with you and learn from somebody who taught the somebody that I learned from. And I just think it's going to be an exciting time to learn so much about God, so much about being the man that you want to be, learning about fatherhood, learning about being a great husband. So much wisdom is going to come out of this.
So I made a post a little while back. Excuse me. We've been talking about having a first guest on this show. And as those of you who listen to this, you often hear me quote my dad. And so Leo and I was talking and said, we're going to be in Louisville. Dad's going to be in Louisville. Why don't we make the first ever guest on the show my dad? So this is a man I've known my entire life. 74 years old, 74 years of wisdom he's about to reveal to you. And somebody who has been just an incredible father and somebody who is a great leader and someone that you're going to learn a lot from. So excited and honored that you're here with us, Pop.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for asking me, and I feel blessed to be here with you today.
How's your energy today?
Wonderful. Doing
Yeah.
good.
Did you have fun at the event?
I did. I enjoyed the event. It was tremendous. Tremendous people, tremendous speakers, tremendous response. I was totally blessed and overjoyed to be here.
What'd you think of that Leo Valentino speaking?
I thought he did an outstanding job, and he kept us on our feet and kept us awake.
All right, so if you guys are ready, we're going to dive in. We're going to start asking a few questions. When I made a post and said we was going to invite Pop on the show, I got a beautiful outpouring of questions. So we're going to read a few of your questions, and we've also come up with some of our own. So, Leo, you want to start us off with the first question?
Yeah. Let's go with one of ours. Let's go with one of ours first. What is the biggest lesson that God has taught you over the past 70 plus years?
The biggest lesson, that's hard to answer because I've learned so many lessons, and I'm still learning today. I have learned how to love and appreciate people more than I ever have in my life. I've grown to look at people in a different light as time has moved on, and it's not only helped me to love them more, but to understand where they come from, why they feel the way they do, why they talk the way they do. And when I understand where they've come from, it gives me a renewed appreciation for the people around me.
That's good.
How do you view people today? What is your perspective after preaching for so long and living so much life? How do you view others now?
I have always had an appreciation for people and for life, but I have my understanding. I have more understanding now of people, and I'm able to forgive them when they do something out of line. And I learned that I cannot always control what people do, how they act, how they treat me, but I'm in 100% control of how I respond to that and how I react to that. And I can always react in a kind way, in a patient, loving, and kind way, no matter what they do.
I have a question. You can answer me on this one. Just pretend the camera's not there, and then we'll dive into some online questions.
Okay.
Cool. How do you raise 6 kids, work multiple jobs, start a business, pastor a church, and do all the other things that you did while I was growing up on a farm on the 35 acres, and felt like you always had time for everything, yet you was always busy. How did you manage all that?
How much time do I have? Well, number one, you've got the best mother in the whole world you could have, which is my wife. She has always given her life for the family and for the children. The way I would find time, one of my prayers all those years was, God, help me to manage my time. Between a time of daily prayer and Bible reading, and going to church and pastoring, working all day long, taking time with the children. One goal I had in mind with my children was to do everything I could to spend every moment that I could with my children. So I always pursued a livelihood or work as much as possible where I could have my children with me as I was working. Your mother, she's the one that took you from 1 to 6, and a child learns more from 1 year, or from 0 really, from birth to 6. A child learns more in those 6 years than they do in the rest of their life combined. So as a result, your mother's the one that gave you that foundation, that taught you about Jesus and taught you to pray. And then from there on, between me and her, we gave our lives wholly, number one, to serve God, and number two, to serve our family. And of course, serving God was church work, visiting people, nursing home ministry. And with all of those things, we were always together as a family. And as a result of that, we are reaping the benefits today of all that. Some people would say it was a sacrifice. Me and your mother did not look at it as a sacrifice. We looked at it as a pleasure and a blessing that we had 6 children. And even though we had to work, we wanted to minister to other people. And even though we were so tight on time at times, we realized through all of that, yes, we wanted to make a living. It was my job to provide for my family. It was your mother's job to take care of the house and the children, to keep things going at the house. But then we understood in all this that money was not the number one issue, even though it takes money, and we need to do what we can to buy the best we can for our children, our family. The most important thing is we're preparing 6 souls for eternity. And when you keep that goal in mind, somehow it helps you to organize your time and keep your priorities where they need to be.
What would you say to parents who have newer kids and are newer to parenting? How would you guide them through guiding those kids to God and guiding those kids to a good life?
Even before children are born, when they're still in the womb, it has been proven that even the songs they hear sung, the voices that they hear even before they're born, has an effect on that baby. So for someone that's carrying a baby in the womb, don't show anger, don't get upset, be pleasant, sing good songs, say good things. Then after they're born, continue on with those habits. As mother rocked the baby, she would sing to them. When the boys were out working with me in later years, I was always accused of this unconsciously. Dad, quit whistling. And I did not realize that I was going around whistling songs that we sung in church. Some of these things that we did unconsciously, but I count it as the blessing of the Lord that I guess some people would call it coincidence, but it was just the way God helped us to deal with everyday cares of life. There's a new word that's been introduced in my vocabulary here in later years called stress. Living on the farm and dealing with all the issues on the farm, we called it real life. Things happen, trouble comes. What do? You just hold your chin up, you keep singing, you keep a good attitude and a good spirit, and you would be surprised how that will reflect on your children. Whenever a mother spends, the most important thing that you can give a child is not money or things or toys or even go places. Even those all have their place. The most important thing you can give those children, Leo, is love and attention. Unlimited love and unlimited attention. There was a little boy sitting on the steps of his house one day. A neighbor passed by and the little boy was crying. The neighbor said to the little boy, "Son, what's wrong? Do you need something to eat, or is something wrong?" "No, my daddy gave me all the money I'll need to buy what I need. I've got everything I need." "Well, what's wrong, son?" "I want my daddy." That's the most valuable thing you can give to a child from zero till they leave home, and even after they leave home.
Wow. How did you learn to trust God fully? You know, what stories in the Bible helped you do that, but also experiences in your life helped you trust in God?
Experiences in life. We just learned, probably because of our upbringing, we just learned that in every situation, whether it was a sick child or something we were dealing with in life, we were just always taught that you turn to God and pray. And then after you turn to God and pray and ask for Him to help you navigate, then oftentimes in our daily Bible reading, it was like God would ordain that we just would read some verses in the Bible that would minister to the very need or the very problem that we were dealing with. And somehow it just gave you the strength to go on. Bible stories, where do we start? There are stories of faith all through the Bible. Abraham believed God, and as a result of him believing God, his works followed. And I'm going to just do this in briefly because I know we don't have 2 hours. And somehow there was a woman by the name of Rahab the harlot, and she would have been looked down on in society, but she hid the spies that came to search out the land. And somehow this woman found it in her heart to believe that God was actually going to deliver Jericho into the hand of Israel. Every man, woman, boy, and girl is given a measure of faith. There's all kinds of adjectives you can put on faith. Small faith, great faith, large faith, little faith. It doesn't matter. Faith is you're believing. It's the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. In other words, faith is what keeps you going from day to day, even when things are looking bad, things are looking down. And then let's go over to the New Testament. Oftentimes, different ones came to Jesus for healing, and He would commend them for their faith. The woman that had an issue of blood for 12 long years, she said, "If I can just touch the hem of His garment." Well, we know there was no power in the garment. We know the power was in Jesus. But without her faith, she would have not received her healing that day. In our personal lives, we saw that with our children. And I don't have time to go into all the stories of our children, but the most recent, and some here at the events have heard about Andrew, and he was so sick at one point in his life. The doctors didn't know what to do. They were getting ready to send him to Indianapolis for a liver transplant. Digestive system was shutting down. Liver numbers were high, and it was just looking bad. And even the brain function, he was not functioning normally and thinking clearly like he used to. On a Thursday night, there were people that we had praying for Andrew. One man that we know from years ago, he called and said he was concerned. And he said, "I've been praying." I couldn't remember the exact date, but I know it was a Thursday night, the first part of July. On that Thursday night, Andrew started getting better. That increases your faith, that if you believe anything, all things are possible to them that believe. That's what's kept us going all through the years.
That's good. Let's do some of the...
So we have quite a few questions here on Facebook that have came in on this post. One of them being from Michelle Davis. Any secret advice to living to be 74 years young? I told her it might be the Pepsi and Hershey candy bars, but we'd have to ask you.
The Pepsi and the Hershey candy bars were not an everyday occurrence, but they were a special treat. Again, some things that happened in our lives, it was just God helping us, and they would be called in other people's words coincidence. We didn't have a lot of money at times, so as a result, we worked, me, my wife, our children, we worked a lot of hours putting out garden, harvesting garden, canning our produce. Sometimes when the boys got into hunting, it would be a deer or some animal we butchered to put in the freezer. And we were health food nuts before it was popular to be health food nuts, and we didn't know it. I attribute, that's one of the basic foundations. We were probably eating healthy for our generation just because of the circumstances. Number two, long life. Living a life for God and not having the, how do I say this, the physical side effects that a low life brings, whether it's, and this is not to condemn anybody wherever you're at, this is not to judge anybody, but by God's mercy, we've never touched alcohol, tobacco, drugs, and again, it was God's blessing. We never had a desire for those things, and that has probably added to our life. Number two, it is a proven fact that people that are regular, faithful church attenders and believers in God, the statistics show that they live longer and happier and more fulfilling lives. I can't say there's any one thing that we did in particular. It was a combination of things. And it was not always getting all the sleep we needed, and it was not always not working hard. Hard work doesn't hurt anybody. Now, I may be talking to some that I know they're probably not taking any chances, but it won't hurt you. And if you're trying your best to live a godly life and to do what's right, that will add time to your life.
That's amazing. Chad McCormick, who was here, he's got 9 kids. He says, I need help knowing when to offer grace and when tough love is needed.
I want to say this carefully. Grace can be tough love, or tough love can be grace. Sometimes they work together. Grace doesn't always mean that you allow things to go on unchecked or not taken care of. Tough love, if you show tough love, I'm going to say this, I'm assuming this is what he means. Tough love is if you have to, if you have to react to a situation, whether it's correcting your children or somebody that's mistreating you or not doing you right. Tough love is that you deal with it, and you either, with a child, you correct them, or you, if you have to, punish them if it calls for that. But you always do it. Here's where grace comes in. You do it letting them know that you love them. In church issues, I've pastored off and on over the years, and if somebody in my church really does something out of line that needs to be dealt with, number one, I pray that God will give me the grace and the wisdom to know how to deal with that individual, approach it. And when the time is right, I've got that individual in a place where it's not making a public scene, I go to them in kindness, put my arm around them, and I will address the issue. Here's what we need to deal with. I want you to know we love you, but what you did was out of line. It caused problems, and I'm asking you to please don't do that again. If you need to, we'll pray with you and ask God to help you with that situation. So tough love and grace sometimes go hand in hand.
So Andrew, Michelle, and Aaron are 3 of the hardest working people that I've ever gotten the pleasure to meet and work with almost every single day. How did you create such hard-working children?
Probably number one is by example. And again, being in our financial condition, we didn't have money to go lots of places and do lots of things. And as a result of that, there were three priorities in our children's lives. Number one was church, God and church. That's one and the same. And then number two was work. And number three was school. And when they went to church and they had friends there, and when they worked at home and they learned to enjoy work because they started when they were big enough to stand at the kitchen sink to do dishes, or big enough to go out and grab a hold of a bucket with Dad, even though they weren't helping, they thought they were. When you start training them that way when they're little, they learn to love to work. They learn to love to help Mom and Dad. And then when they get 10, 12, 16, they still love it and they enjoy it. Me and Mother, we enjoyed our work. Our children enjoyed their work. Until this day, they still enjoy it. And the schooling, I want to be real respectful here because I don't teach or exhort people how to go in their education. Our children went through high school, and some of them thank me because I did not push them to go to college. And they learned that they were never going to let their schooling interfere with their education.
Good.
Do you have any more? I'm gonna keep going.
I'll keep going. This is good.
Okay, I want to move on to leadership and a bit about biblical leadership and masculinity. So a couple questions. First one is, what does biblical leadership look like today, and how has it changed over time?
For leadership to work, you have to have followers. We live in a society, and of course, me being my age, I can go back to the 60s, and there was a movement in the 60s of rebellion that you don't trust anybody over 30. That was a saying back in the 60s. There's so many things to address here. The children started, it seemed like there was more of a rebellion. Now, some people say every child goes through a rebellious stage, but in the 60s it was magnified. And I'm going to skip quite a bit right here. There's been steps to that, but for time's sake, I'll skip over. We have now reached a place as a result of not submitting to leadership. Now we even have people that defy law enforcement, defy school teachers, defy leadership in the church. That's made it very difficult. To be a good leader, it takes supernatural wisdom and grace and help to know how to lead people. Everybody's a different personality. Everybody came from different backgrounds. To be a good leader, you've got to understand how they think and why they think that way, where they came from. And then after you learn all about that, then you can lead them to where you want them to go, hopefully to a more virtuous life, a more disciplined life. I'm going to sound critical here. I don't mean to be critical, but part of life that makes life so fulfilling is a disciplined life. When you live for others instead of live for yourself, you make a good follower, and you're always wanting to do something to please and satisfy others. Now, I know you can't please everybody, but when it comes to leadership, in order to lead people, I have to have people to follow me. My children, probably more was caught than taught. In other words, you lead by example. If I tell you to do something and I'm not willing to do it, I will fail as a leader. I'm even pastoring a small church now. And for example, we just recently had a problem with the drainage in our church. And coming from my background, I don't mind getting down in the ditch with a shovel and throwing out dirt and digging. Well, when people see you're willing to do that, it don't bother them to get down there and get to work. A good leader shows the way and goes the way.
What is something you see in men today that concerns you, and what is your advice for those men?
there is an influence in our society today that was trying to make our men more effeminate. And what I mean by that is more like a woman instead of like a man. And that's a trend we have to fight against. And I think there are some well-meaning wives today. Now, wives, please, I don't want any wives mad at me here. But sometimes because us men do not react in a highly emotional way like our wife reacts, she wants us to come down and get emotional with her. Well, what we have to understand, God made men and women different. Women by nature are more emotional, more tender, more loving, more kind. God does not want man to be like that. Yes, He wants us to love. Yes, He wants us to care. Yes, He wants us to show concern. I'll give you a good example. Because with 6 children out on the farm, somebody was always getting hurt. And when one of our children would get hurt, the difference between me and my wife, and I've got the best wife you could ever have, but between me and her, it was, oh, honey, it's, oh. I said, it's too far from his heart to kill him. It's not that bad. She didn't get upset with me because I didn't get down in her emotional state, and she didn't get upset. I didn't get upset with her, rather, because she didn't get up to my level, because we're different. And the masculine, he should always lead. God created the man to provide for his family and to protect his family. And we have to buck the tide of our culture in order to succeed. And it not only takes God, but it takes a real conscious effort and a change of mindset to realize that in our day, because we're being programmed the other way. And you may not think we are, but society is very subtle, and they have a way of programming us to think in the wrong way, and we don't even realize it. So beware. Read your Bible, ask God for wisdom and direction, and if you've been raised, and again, no offense, but in our day there's a lot of single-parent homes, and if a boy has been raised by his mother, he has maybe more of a tendency to be that way. That's nothing against that boy. That's nothing against that mother. You can't help circumstances. But one thing we can do is make them aware of that and say you have to make a conscious effort to grow up and be a man and be a leader.
What are the steps that somebody can take? They listen to your words and they get inspired and they say, I want to be a man. I want to lead better. I want to be a better father. I want to be a better teacher. I want to be better led by God. What are those steps that take that man to that level?
Okay, number one, we lead by example. Look at other men that have been a real force in their home or even in their church or in their business. We have good men that are strong leaders in every aspect and area of society. And what young men need to do if they need help in that area is find a man that they can look how he makes decisions, how he reacts under pressure, how he treats other women and girls. You see, men that are really masculine, they treat girls and women with respect. Again, this goes against the trend of our society. A real man opens the door and lets the woman go in first. A real man doesn't make slutty jokes and make fun of women. A real man, he doesn't put women down and criticize them. And so you look for men like that in your life that are living that kind of life, that you be a good example for you. And because you could go back in the Bible and you can read about men like Moses that were great leaders, men like Joshua that were great leaders, Abraham. The Bible says about Abraham, I know he will order his house after the Lord. There are examples all through the Bible and in our world. So you have to consciously look for those kind of men and then see how they do things and how they don't do things. And if you've been programmed wrong, it may be a process to get to be the man you need to be.
What's been your philosophy, of course, growing up in the home and family with you and mom and the 5 siblings? What has been your philosophy to have now 50, in a few days, 54, coming up on 54 years of marriage? What's the philosophy of a successful marriage like that?
How long do I have?
As long as you want.
All day.
A successful marriage. Number one, a man is to love his wife as Christ loved the church. I'm to put her above my needs and my wants. Number two, the wife has to, and I know this is a bad word in our society, but there's a right way to do this. A wife must submit to her husband. In other words, the husband asks his wife if they're making decisions. He gets her input. He says, here's the way I think. And they come to a conclusion, and he makes the final decision. Now, I know it's hard for a woman to respect her husband who is imperfect, because we love God who is perfect. So in our home, my wife understood I wasn't perfect, and I understood that she probably had some things that weren't always exactly, that suited me. What you do is you love them no matter what. And that love between mom and dad is reflected in the children and their behavior and their actions. If mom and dad do not have a good relationship and a good home, it will negatively impact the children. If they see that mom and dad treat each other with respect and love one another, it will impact the children. The dad is the first authority in the home that represents God. And I'm not saying that mother doesn't have a place. She has a very, very important role, a powerful influence. But the man was the way God ordained it to be the leader in the home. And so when those children are born up to a certain age, that daddy, that father, is the first representative of God in that home. However mama treats daddy, it could influence how those children will treat God when they get older. And so the philosophy in our home, Andrew, has been we treat one another with respect. If I had a complaint about the way mama done something, I went to her in secret or private. If she had a problem with the way I'd done something, she came to me in secret. We did not confront each other with any issue in front of the children. As far as our children knew, we had a perfect marriage. Oh, and by the way, we do. And and in dealing with the children, we had to be on the same page. In our society today, now this is not everybody, but I have seen this in my work. Dad will say, no, you can't do that. That child outsmarts the parents. And he goes to mama and says, Mama, can I do that? And mama says, yeah, go ahead. When you ought to be saying what daddy say, and vice versa. If mom has told the child something, yes or no, and, well, they usually don't ask dad then, but if it's told no, they'll come and ask dad. Dad, you should find out what mama said. Because when your children get you divided against each other, then they're causing friction and problems in the home, and they see mom and dad disagreeing and not on the same page, and it affects them. It'll cause them to grow up in a dysfunctional way. And I know that's what we're dealing with in a lot of homes and settings today, but there is a right way, and if I could add this without sounding real religious, there's God's way, there's my way, and the world's way, and God's way is the best.
If this were your final time speaking to this generation, what would you want them to remember?
If this was the final time, if this was the last time I got to talk to this generation, what would I tell them? Well, I have to speak from a pastor's perspective. Surrender your will and your life to Jesus Christ. A life of total surrender is the happiest, most fulfilling life that you can live. I'm not speaking as an outsider. I'm speaking from an insider and experience. Had we not had Jesus Christ first in our home and in our family, I don't know how our home would have ended up. We could have been the fortunate ones and still had a good home, or we could have been the less fortunate and ended up in divorce, children going several different directions, and all kinds of problems. Please don't take me wrong. I know there are good homes out there. And sometimes things still don't turn out the way you want. Don't take this as a slander or a slap, please. I understand that. I'm just simply giving this generation advice. Whenever a young man or a young woman seeks to pursue a future spouse for their life, that's not something to be taken lightly. That's something that you should consider, that I'm going to choose this mate, and I'm going to live with this mate for the rest of my life. And if there's problems that arise, we're going to ask God for wisdom and direction, and we're going to do everything in our power to work it out. Some couples say we're going to stay together for the children's sake. That's not altogether bad. That's 50% bad. You should stay together for mom and dad's sake. If I had advice for this generation, I want to warn you that there are people out there, there are institutions, there are cultural norms that are destructive to your life, your future, and your family. You have to be able to tell what cultural norms are going to be a blessing and a help to you, and you're going to have to determine which ones are going to be harmful to you and make wise decisions. Younger generation, if you're not sure, I'm going to take you back to this. Get advice from somebody that's older, somebody that's had a good marriage for years, that's got a good family. Go back to them for advice and seek their counsel and their direction. And somewhere, God will put somebody in your life that'll help you do it right.
What does it sound like in your voice to ask God for wisdom? How do you do that?
I ask God for wisdom every day. I ask Him for wisdom to guide my home. Now pastoring a small group of people with some struggles, I ask God for wisdom to know how to deal with them. The Bible said, if any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. And God will give us wisdom as the need arises, but also we're to ask for it. We ask in a humble way. And number one, you got to realize, God, I don't know how to do some things. I don't always have the right answers. I don't always make the right decisions. I need wisdom that comes from you.
Now, since you've been here over the past 3 days, I've heard you talk about Christ about 400 or 500 times, and it's a beautiful thing.
I'm sorry I didn't do it more.
And we had talked about how there's people out here who talk about Jesus but don't actually talk about Jesus.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
What do you think's going on there? What do you think's going on in the church in this generation? What's happening?
Okay, we have a generation now that not everybody, but many of them have been raised up with that very little knowledge of the Bible, of God, of Jesus Christ, and that whole Christian story. And because of that, when somebody does not know, it is easy to lead them astray. But by the same token, if they have a sincere, honest heart, I believe that somehow there will be an intuition that they'll understand there's a real and there's not a not real. Some people use their religion or their Christianity or their Jesus for an advantage in their business. That's degrading, that's harmful to the gospel. I never use my Jesus to get a job or to get influence or to make money, or that's a perverted way of using his name and using Christianity. Christianity, when we tell this generation that Jesus died for their sins, just in a nutshell, they need to know that they can have a personal experience and a personal relationship with Jesus Christ that's unexplainable but undeniable. In other words, they will know when they've made that connection. And the very Jesus that comes to live in their heart will guide them and direct them. Oh yes, they will make mistakes. Sometimes they'll make a bad decision. But as long as their heart is to follow Him and His commandments and please God, there'll be something on the inside that'll check him and help him get back on the right track.
Has there ever been a time or a season you and Mom went through where you nearly lost your faith or deeply questioned your faith? And if so, what was that?
Yeah, our faith has been tested and tried. Probably, I couldn't tell you the year now, but we went through a real low place, and it seemed like that it was probably our fault more than anybody else's. But when you get in that place, you're usually blaming others. You're usually saying, well, I don't really feel like going to church. I really don't feel like living the Christian life. And just to put it real plain, it's when you get to looking at others that are not doing things right, and all you can see in professing Christians or churchgoers is negative things, and how they're not doing this right, and they're not doing that right, and that preacher done this wrong. That will destroy your faith. You know why? Because you got your faith in man instead of God. As long as you keep your faith in God and have confidence in your fellow man, you'll be okay. But the time, if you want to say it, tried our faith, I'd say the time I struggled was when I got to looking around at others too much and seeing how so many were not doing what they professed to do. They didn't have what they professed to have, and it took the air out of my sails. I didn't have any desire to go out, and live a bad life. But I did not have the faith and the zeal and the desire like I do now. But it was a trial in our life, and let me just give you this. How did you make through that? I made it through that because every day I would pray, and every day I'd read my Bible. And that's why I said, if you really want to follow God, even when you fall into those times, He will help you through those, past those, and over those times.
How do we begin to hear God's voice and discern His voice from others?
That's a tough one. Discerning God's voice. I'm going to go back and I'm going to do a little repeating here, Leo. I feel like that if you're praying to God every day and you're reading your Bible every day, if you're going to church to worship regularly, I believe there will be an intuition. There will be that sixth sense that will tell you, yes, this is God impressing this on you to do this or to live like this or not do this. And it's called discernment. And it doesn't come, how do I say this? It's not something I can teach you. I might give you some guidelines, but it takes that personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And I'll just give you an example. My dad, we would go to church sometimes, and somebody might come in, and my dad would say, I'm just not sure about that person, but this is old school now. He said, but I just can't put my thumb on it. In other words, he sensed that something wasn't right. He didn't know what, and he didn't tell nobody, maybe the family on the way home. So that's what it takes to discern between God's voice and the wrong voice. If you're in alignment with God, there'll be a voice, not maybe audible, but there'll be a voice in your mind and your heart that'll help you to know.
When I read the book, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale, as I read it, and it would talk about framing everything in a positive way, I felt like I was reading about you. Because I always remember growing up, whether it was the way you answered the phone of, it's a beautiful day in Southern Illinois, or whether it was always replying positive about your kids, or on a cold, dreary day when we'd be out in the snow and ice working and we'd complain about freezing and you'd say it was a beautiful day. I always remember those perspectives. But for you, what gave you or gives you that constant positive outlook? Is it a habit? Is it a perspective? Where does that come from?
God. You want a longer answer? A relationship, an intimate relationship and fellowship with God. I guess there is a choice you make. You can choose to look at a dark, dreary, snowy, cold, rainy day, or you can choose to say, it's great to be alive, another day to live and enjoy, another day to help somebody, another day to whatever, go to work or whatever we're doing. It just really depends on whether you want to look at the negatives or on the positives. And if you dwell on the negatives, you're going to be down all the time. and you're going to get people down around you all the time. I have noticed that people that allow the weather to control their feelings and emotions, the sun can be shining and they're still grouchy.
What do you say to the person that feels a little bit distanced by God? Maybe it's been a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and they're a little bit shy when they come to talk to God again.
Well, it's one thing to be shy around people like I was as a boy, but there's never a reason to be shy around God. If there's somebody listening today or watching and you're feeling this like Leo said, I want you to know that God always has his ear open. He always has his eye towards you. He always has his arm outreach to you. You're never bothering God. He will be delighted to hear from you. It's not, oh no, not Robert again. It's, oh, looky down there. Leo's praying. Look at that. You see, God delights in us coming to him. Whether it's with our troubles and our complaints, complain to God. Say, God, you see what's going on in my life and I don't like it. You say, complain to God? Well, he knows it anyhow. You're just verbalizing it. You just be as honest with God. Now, sometimes you can be honest with people, but now there's some people you might not want to. But you can come to God and pour out your heart and never feel bashful, backward, shy, or ashamed because he delights to hear from you.
One last question from me is if you had to talk to your 25-year-old self, what advice would you give to him?
Grow up sooner. What advice would I give to my 25-year-old self? Learn to have more compassion and mercy on people. Learn to be more patient and kind when things go wrong. Don't let things in life that don't go wrong or in church, don't let it bother you. Learn to get past it, to get over it. Don't let it bog you down. Work-wise, I would probably pursue maybe construction and self-employment at a younger age, which would have benefited my older children more than what it has. But, you know, it was a season of life. I didn't know that. But, yeah, if I had to do over, I don't regret a mile I've traveled, but there are some things that I would do different.
Thanks so much for sharing that and for sharing some of the wisdom nuggets that you've taught me over the few decades of my life in the show today. Is there any final words of wisdom or anything you want to wrap up with?
Well, the Bible said, fear God and keep his commandments, for that's the whole duty of man. And if you seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, he said, all these other things will be added unto you. Now, that don't mean all the niceties of life. It means your needs. It's talking about your food, shelter, clothing, the things of life that are necessary for you to live. And if you put him first, there will be times that it will seem like a sacrifice. I liked what you said at the event. When you make $100, you give 10 of it to charity. I have found out I'm not a prosperity preacher. I don't preach give and God will give back to. That's not my philosophy. Mine is evidenced in real life. If you give 10% and sometimes even above and beyond to a church or a charity or to help somebody in need, some way or another, it may not be a check in the mail, it may not be money in the bank, but you will be reimbursed. And only one thing I can think of right now, we had that 1990 Bowlville van with all of our 6 children, 8 passenger. I'd never had a vehicle that ran 300,000 miles without a breakdown. And I looked at it as that's one of the benefits I had from being faithful and giving to God.
That's good. Do you want to end us in a prayer?
All right. Dear Lord, we thank you for this beautiful day. We thank you for this time that we've had to spend here at this event, for all the precious, precious people that we've met, learned to love and enjoy. God, thank you for Andrew, for Leo, for their ministry and what they're doing. Bless their lives. Bless their ministry. Bless them in business, but most of all, bless them in your work. Those that may be watching today, as we do this podcast, I pray we've said something today. Please don't let anything be taken wrong, misconstrued, taken out of context, but help those we have talked to today to apply it to their lives, that they might know the riches and the blessing and the goodness of God in their lives. And we'll thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. We'll be back Monday, same time, same place. Thank you, Mr. Schlag, for being on.
Thanks, Pop. Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks for having me.
Later, guys.
Bye for now.
I've always been.